presume you're here because you want to learn how to be a better operator. Get crickets. Don't want to be a better operator, but you want a place to sit down. Both. Okay. So keep it safe. Hey Mitch, why are you going to tell us how to be a better operator? What do you know about this? I typically makes about 7,000 QSOs a year. I don't set out that way, it just ends up being that way. And then just recently, as part of the W1SJ portable line operation from Vermont. Well, big pileups, the whole thing, right? So I get to hear what everyone else sounds like and find some surprising things. This talk's going to actually have two parts. The first part, we're going to talk about being an emergency operator, because that's pretty important, and few hands really know what to do with that. Now, it's true with phones and everything else, there's not as much call for us to be operators, but sometimes there are. So, why emergency preparedness? Right? Well, hello. Why emergency? Your mic's not on. My mic's not. I gotta mute my speaker. That. Fix that problem. Right? Because my mic's right?
On, you were here. Okay. The prime directive, this is what the FCC tells us. Recognition and enhancement of the value of the amateur service to the public as a voluntary, non-commercial communication service, particularly with respect to providing emergency communications. The reason why we exist is because we are useful in emergencies. If we're not doing that, we're not all that useful. And you always have to kind of keep that at the back of your mind. Now, most times we're not dealing with emergencies, but sometimes we are. The other reason is we might as well do something useful, right? I mean, collecting countries and QSL cards, yeah, it's fine, whatever, but it's not that useful. And helping people out feels good. I mean, that's a reason why you want to do that. So the question is, are you ready for an emergency? And when I run this at shows, a lot of people are not. Like, the first question I'll ask is, do you have a charged HT with you at all times? Who doesn't have an HT with them? What's that thing on your thing? Your eyeglasses. Okay, I guess. Here's my HT. I shut it off so it doesn't, it won't bother us during the show. It sits in my computer bag at all times. Okay, and by the way, these things don't work unless they're charged. So you have to kind of like charge it regularly. I have that. So if something happens, I can talk to somebody locally. It's important. Most hams don't have them. And at a ham fest, you absolutely should have one. I mean, why not, right? The second one, can you program your HT without a computer? Few hams can. Oh, I got to get my laptop and get the cable and all that. The events I do, so I do the communications for the Vermont City Marathon. They're going to go program their radios. Oh, okay. Are those speakers supposed to work? Oh, okay. I'll talk louder. So I do communications for the Vermont City Marathon. I have previously done the New York City Marathon and Boston Marathon. We tell people, be able to turn your radio on and off, and B, program your radio on the fly. Well, don't you give us the frequencies? Yes, but things happen. You might have to change it. My wife is a communicator. Oh, I don't want to do it. I just want to put it in memory. I said, what if that all changes? What if the repeater blows up and this happens and that happens? It's happened. So you really need to be able to do that. I can pick up my HT. I know how to program it quickly. Do you have a working mobile radio? How many drove to this ham fest? They don't have a mobile radio in their car. Are you a ham?
I am.
But no radio. You have an HF radio?
I have been dormant for 30 years.
Okay, so it's good. This is going to be the call to undormant yourself and get on the air. Do you have multiple sources of backup power? Well, I plug it into my car. Say, yeah, what's going to charge your car battery? Well, I'll start the engine up. Yeah, where are you going to get the gas from? If we have a widespread power outage And what we're hearing is the power grid's not keeping up in some places, right? Where are you going to get your gas from? Gas pumps don't work so well when there's no power.
I do have access to solar.
But you live in New England, where the sun is the fugitive for half the year, right? Do you keep your gas tank full? I used to not. I used to see, let's see how far I can drive this sucker before it runs out of gas, or when I was young and stupid. I don't do that much anymore. Do you have basic water and food rations available? In other words, are you a prepper? Okay, I mean, I've always kept about 8 gallons of water in the basement because, you know what, if the food runs out, you can hang on for a while. If there ain't no water, that's not good. So, you know, at least you should have a few days' supply. If you're really into being prepper, you know, you get one of those big buckets and it'll keep you going for a month or two. But that's the extreme thing. But yeah, you should always have that in the back of your mind. Don't assume you're going to go to the store and find stuff. Do you have any idea what to do? Oh my God, there's an emergency. What do I do? I don't know. Well, turn the radio on for starters. Before the emergency happens, you should have a basic idea with the hams in your community where to all meet and what to do. And emergencies are not planned; they just happen. It's not like, okay, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, like they have these emergency alerts on the radio there. Those are pre-planned. Okay, real emergencies are not. They just happen suddenly, and they may happen at an inconvenient time, like 11 o'clock at night or something, when you don't really feel like playing ham radio. So your typical large-scale emergency scenarios, weather situation, that's our biggie here in New England because our weather can get weird. Flooding, which is big in Vermont, big in New Hampshire. Snow. Snow is not much of an emergency. I mean, how do you deal with all that snow in Vermont? It's simple. I stay in the house and watch it snow. I don't go anywhere. Then it's easy. High winds can be a problem. Of course, out west, it's a little bit different there. They get earth slides and earthquakes and weird things like that. The weather's clearly changing. Things are warming up. We can get into a whole argument of who's causing it. That's not the point. The point is things are changing, and what we have to do as survivors is be ready to meet that change. And there's more effect on people because more and more people are living in hazardous places. Okay, we just sold a family home on the Barrier Beach in Florida along A1A. You should not have a home on the Barrier Beach, whether it's in Florida or whether it's in Long Island, whatever. Those things are supposed to flood. That's the whole idea. That's the way it was set up. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. People live in mountain passes. In Vermont, what we do, they have a flood, and then they clean up the flood and repave the roads, and then it floods again. In Vermont, our emergency management organization is located in a town called Waterbury. Why do they call it Waterbury? Because it floods there all the time. Duh. And from the last flood, Hurricane Irene, they weren't responding to the emergency preparedness. They were basically manning the rowboats to get out of there. And what did they do? They built it right back in the same place. Right, civil unrest. Well, you know, have you noticed that there's like less food in the stores, there's empty shelves? That could get worse. And when there's like not enough food and fuel, people kind of get really ugly and they start shooting at one another. At least that's what we've seen in other countries. Terrorism, you know, we don't want to talk about it, but it sometimes happens. And all these things are situations which may overload normal law enforcement, and we may be called in to help. So is amateur radio necessary? In most cases, no, we are not needed, and hams need to get that, because what happens is something happens and the responders are already there, and hams come up with their bright orange vests. Here I am to save the day. Remember Mighty Mouse? I watched that when I was a kid. You guys look old enough. Here I am to save the day. No, don't do that. I mean, do you guys need help? No, go home. Or spectate, whatever. Most emergencies can be handled by the civil authorities. Okay, we're not needed. So ham radio is not necessarily needed or even desired. You're just in the way. And ham behavior sometimes turns off the authorities. So it's a very careful dance you have to orchestrate. But we are needed sometimes. Local emergencies can overtax local authorities. So you got all these little towns across New Hampshire and Vermont. They don't have a lot of extra people. They may get overwhelmed, then they're going to welcome our help. And the trick is to have a relationship with them so they know who to call and they know what you can do for them. So you want to develop that relationship with the government and the local police departments. So our job when we do an event, so when I do the marathon, I call somebody, no answer. I call somebody, no answer. And I tell them, it says, when I call you, I need an answer immediately, if not sooner. Because somebody's asking me a question, and if you're not answering me, that's not good. Well, where were you? Well, I was moving the garbage cans. Oh, I was directing traffic. No, your job is to play radio. Let somebody else move the garbage cans. If you want to do other stuff, don't do amateur radio. Leave the traffic control and law enforcement effort to somebody else. You can't serve two masters. You're either with us or you're with somebody else. If you're going to be on the side, that's fine. And the job is to pass information quickly and accurately. And I emphasize quickly because the hams get on there, well, we got a problem, you know, this long verbiage. Come in, have a seat. I don't bite. Well, I may. It's before lunch for me, but I think you're safe back there. So you plan for anything. Avoid the playbook scenarios. A lot of these people, oh, we have this playbook. Remember, before 2001, nobody expected anyone to fly into a building, right? I mean, somebody's going to invent a new weird thing, and we have to be ready to do it. And my attitude is that as a ham operator, I can communicate anything to anyone at any time. That's what I focus on. What you want to do with it, that's your business. And certainly miracle work is in play. Well, we need to communicate here, but we don't have any equipment, we don't have any power. Our job is to figure it out. That's what we're good at. So the scenarios for an operator. So you got to understand, what is your station going to do? You need access to an available, or if you have access to an available radio facility with power, that's the best possible scenario. You go into an EOC, Emergency Operations Center, they got a ham radio there, they got power, they got the whole thing, you sit down, great, you can do your job. That's great, sometimes not. They don't have that. You have to operate from home. Well, do you have power at home? Maybe, maybe not. You got to figure that out. You have access to a station, but you don't have power. You got to fire up the generator. And by the way, generators are only good if you run them regularly and service them. Okay, if you don't like change the oil, do any of that stuff, they're gonna fail on you. Or you have no access to any station anywhere. You don't have a structure. You don't have anything. You're basically operating out of your car on a street corner somewhere. It happens. Then operator care. If you have a heated AC facility with food, water, you know, the whole thing, ability to rest, that's great. But then if we go down the route from that, you have no heat or AC, no food or water, all the supplies have to be brought in, and then finally, no facility to go. Again, you're in your car somewhere. We do a lot of portable operations, okay? So we're used to that, actually. So the station, I have a mnemonic called RAP, radio, antenna, power. Those are the three things you need. If you're missing any of those three things, it don't work. So the radio, make sure your radio is reliable. Whatever it is you use, make sure, it's going to come right up. You can program it. It's not going to do funky things, whatever. Sure, you can set any frequency, any offset, any tone. Have both an HT and a mobile, because you may have to walk away from the radio and keep talking or whatever. And headphones are a must. So many times I see people forget the headphones and there's noise and you tell everyone to shut up. Well, you can't do that. They need to be doing what they're doing. You put the headphones on. That's important. So for an antenna, have a good outside antenna. Don't rely on this. I mean, this is good as a backup. In fact, last year in the Vermont Marathon, the guy, I wasn't there, so I had people who I recruited, and they were just going to use HTs. I go, no, don't do that. If the repeater goes out, you may have to talk simplex to the people down the route. You need the outside antenna to do that. I says, plan for everything to break down, and you have options. If you put yourself into a box where you only have one way of doing it, then you don't have an option if something fails. Don't rely on the rubber duck. They don't work all that well. And have a mobile antenna or a do-it-yourself dipole. You know, I have a little dipole cut for 2 meters I can hang anywhere, ready to go. And by the way, repeaters may not be working. So again, you need a plan D. And well, wait a minute, we're too far away. Well, you have to think about what you can do if that happens. AC power is great if available, but if it's not available, well, you can do this a couple ways. You can have a charged 17 to 24 amp hour battery ready to power mobiles. So you really want to be, I mean, like a motorcycle battery is kind of like the bare minimum. You want to be like a little bit heavier than that to run like a 25 watt mobile. It's got to be charged though. If you like let it sit around for 6 months, that's not going to work. Don't rely on an HT or battery, right? The battery or HT is going to last at best 24 hours, and that's if you don't talk into it too much. Okay? Same thing with repeaters. Well, our repeater's great, we have backup. How long do you think the battery and the repeater will keep the repeater on the air? Any ideas? Again, 24 hours, you're doing well. This happened in New York. Remember we had that big blackout 20 years ago that started and went across Ohio, went across New York, and just as it came into Vermont, the operator there kicked out the plug, and we were spared. We didn't lose our power, and all the repeaters in New York City, they had no power, but a few of them stayed on, they had backup power. Well, after 24 hours, guess what? They went away too. The only repeaters left on were the ones where they had generators hooked to them. So yeah, you can charge from a vehicle or a generator or solar, but where will the fuel come from? If it's a long-term outage, you have to think about that. So during an emergency, Murphy's Law, you all know what Murphy's Law is, right? Murphy's Law is on steroids. There's going to be everything being thrown at you. And our job as hams, we're problem solvers. The commercial people, they're down for the count right now. We got to figure it out. And that's what we're supposedly good at. So have a backup for everything. Have a backup radio, backup antenna, backup battery, backup power, the whole thing. And by the way, if you're using a computer, computers are usually the first things to fail. Be able to carry on without the computer, which means have some paper and a pencil laying around if you need to. So then we need to talk about operator ability. You need to practice. This stuff does not, you're not going to learn this from the license manual, by the way. The best practice strategy is making a lot of QSOs, doing this stuff all the time, getting involved in the different marathons of the events and whatever. You see it all. Regularly participate in phone contests on sideband if you have HF privileges, because you are constantly exchanging information. You're sending and you're receiving. You get to listen, you get to talk, you get to do all the things that you would do in an emergency, except you're doing it on HF. Activities such as field day and park activations are great for this. Okay, where field day is great. You get to set all the stuff up in the field. I mean, you want to see things fail. Everything goes wrong during field day. We have backups to the backups, right? Regular participation in public service events. Checking into nets don't count. How many checks into nets? Nobody. Good, right? Oh, I checked in the training net. It sounds, first of all, nets are kind of like dumb. Think about it. There's a preamble. A guy reads the same hackneyed thing that they read every week, right? And then at the end of this whole 2-minute expose, are there any stations with emergency or priority traffic? Well, wait a minute, man. If I had emergency traffic, you think I'm going to sit through that stupid preamble? I'm going to break in saying, I got an emergency now. Send the paramedics, send whatever. I'm not going to wait for you to, I mean, really, it's silly, right? Yeah, you're going to wait for that. And then they want you to say, this is, pause, let up on the microphone and give your call sign, right? And so what do you hear? You hear two people say, this is, together. They both pause at the same time, and they both give their call at the same time, and you hear nothing on it. Just give your call sign. Either the net control is going to get it or not. He's going to read off who he got. If your name is not listed, if your call is not listed, then try it again. That's how we do it on HF, by the way. So they, you know, I mean, nets will get into protocol and all that other stuff, but it really doesn't teach you to be an efficient operator. Practice with different radios and antennas. So you may need to use different equipment than you're normally used to. So you should be able to pick up any radio, any antenna, and do well with it. Learn to actively listen and keep notes. So I talk to people on the radio, and I'm on there, and what did you call again? what's your name again? And when they do that, I find a reason to say, I got to run. Someone's calling me or whatever. I don't like that. If I give my information, I really expect to give it once, not like many times. And if I can remember who you are with my brain, which is very old, you should have a half a chance too. So learn to listen and get the message right. And on the other side of this is when you have a situation, you have to give the message with the minimum number of words. Each word you use is going to cost you $5. Okay, so in a marathon, we got to run her down. Oh my God, we got to run her down somewhere on the course. Somewhere on the course. Yeah, that's useful. And yeah, blood and all that. No, that's not what I want to hear. What I want to hear is runner number this. We got to give the sex. That's required. Male, not breathing, and this exact location. Those are the 4 things that we send to the fire department, and they roll the wagon. Okay, everything else we don't care about. And if it's a death, we tell them that goes off the radio entirely because we're monitored on that particular thing. But yes, quickly, what's the situation? Don't give me a whole story. Tell me the story later when we get together for drinks. Check your emotions at the door. You really have to have ice water in the veins for this kind of stuff because you may see something pretty horrific and you can't react to it. Emotional ops will scream into the microphone and will not be heard or not be understood. Emotion and panic will result in poor operating decisions. And this is a really hard skill to master. You have to just look at it and just disconnect from it. This is what I got to do. Okay, so case in point, during the Boston Marathon, right? Normally I'm at the finish line in the big tent. This particular year, they put me in the massage room in the basement of the John Hancock building, about 3 blocks away. So I wasn't aware what was going on except what was coming on the radio. And I was pissed that they weren't giving me the massage. They were only giving it to these runners. I need it more than they do, right? And all of a sudden, over the radio, oh my God, a bomb, there's body parts flying. And he's screaming into the microphone and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, this is some nutcase just broke into the net here or whatever and driving us crazy. And I didn't hear anything from net control for a full 2 minutes. They go, net from SJ, what's going on? Well, we don't know. I said, wrong answer. What's going on? Well, there's been an apparent bomb. I says, net from SJ, can you tell me the difference between an apparent bomb and a real bomb? And then finally, I think I kicked something in, and then he got all of a sudden brains. Okay, we're going to do a roll call and see who's amongst us, which is important because, I mean, we have hams floating around that whole finish line area, and that was a smart thing to do. But it took a while. It's like, well, wait a minute, don't just leave that going there. And by the way, in my opinion, law enforcement did a horrible job there because you want to calm people. I mean, that's a situation where you want shelter in place, and for God's sake, don't touch anything, right? And first thing they do, they turn all the phones off. You want to panic people, turn the phones off, right? They did that. And then they turned the subways off. And then they found the suspicious backpack, so they detonated it. So now people hear another bomb go off, and now people are climbing the walls. It's like, no, don't do that. That is like really dumb. My opinion, nobody asked me for my opinion, but I mean, really, they thought they detonated the bomb with a phone. So that's why they turned everything off. But, there's collateral damage when you start doing those kinds of things. So know your surroundings. When you're driving, where are you? We have an accident on I-89. Where? Well, somewhere in New Hampshire, past Manchester. Yeah, that's helpful. Know where you are. Now, it's a problem. I used to drive the Taconic Parkway in New York. There are no exits or exit numbers. There's streets with Indian names that white people can't pronounce, right? And there's little mileage markers which you cannot see. So for me to tell them where I am, I have to literally turn the GPS on and give them a lat long, because it's hard on that road. It's dark as hell at night. But generally, you should know approximately where you are so someone can find you. Know how to reach authorities at all times. When you dial 911, where's that going to go to? I was where was I? I was just over the line into Nassau County, but the repeater was in Queens. You dial 911, you get NYPD, not Nassau PD. You got to understand what the thing is. And in Albany, the repeater is way the heck out in Rotterdam, and you're in downtown Albany. That's not going to work. So you have to understand that stuff. Know where all your other hams are located if you need help. So what do? Emergency happens, what do I do? Well, turn on the radios. There's your first start, right? If you can, monitor the local repeaters for activities, monitor HF for activities. If you're on HF, quickly reach out to others via phone and email, if that still exists. If no activity, start the activity. You may be the first one there. And have a master emergency plan. The plan for all hams in the area to know what to do if different things happen. If an electromagnetic pulse happens where it wipes everything else, what do? Well, the radio is probably not going to work. Get together at the central square of town. I don't know, whatever it happens to be. So that's the emergency part. Now we're going to talk about how to actually be a better operator where you work more people and collect more QSL cards or stuff like that, right? So set up your station. So where are you going to set up your station? Well, how many are on HF? Okay, it's a few. So some of you are going to learn some new things here. Well, you can set it up from home. Obviously, that's a simple one. Or from, let's say you live in an apartment or whatever and you can't send anything up there. You can set up a station in your car or your boat or your RV or whatever. Or you can go portable to a park or a camp or a ham fest. There's some big antennas out in the back there somewhere. All these are in play. But before you do that, do your homework. The first thing is what's allowed and what's not. They may not allow antennas. Some people are weird. You can't put a wire in the tree. It may hurt the tree. I've heard that. Guys in Michigan said they can't hang antennas out of trees. This sounds like a good reason to move to me. We have a problem with that. Where can everything fit? If you have a 66-foot long dipole for 40 meters and you only got 40 feet of room, you got to come up with a different plan. Where the antenna, the feed line is going to go, and also you got to do it safe. If the wire lets go and falls down, you don't want plunking somebody on the head. So what are you going to need? You're going to need a radio, clearly. You're going to need power, either coming from an AC if there's a nearby outlet or generator, a computer for logging and spotting, headphones, and you notice I got the exclamation points there. Don't forget the headphones. Guy went to a park in New Hampshire over by West Leb. Didn't bring headphones. He set the whole thing up. He had his wire in the tree and everything. And he's about to operate, and a whole bunch of girls from the local school came there, and they're going to have lunch on the picnic table next to his. And girls are not particularly, schoolgirls are particularly not quiet. He couldn't hear a darn thing. Throws his hands up in disgust. And he's, okay, the girls have left. They've gone back to school. Now I'm going to operate. The lawnmowers come out. You still can't hear anything. That's not the funny part. The funny part is he posted it on YouTube. I wouldn't have posted that. I keep that a big dark secret. So yeah, and I point to that as don't forget the headphones. That's pretty darn important. Also don't forget the microphone if you're going to be on phone. If you forget the microphone, then you're going to be a CW operator, I'm afraid. Or the key, or the keyer, or if you're going to do FT8, you got to bring the cabling for it. You're going to usually need a tuner and a good antenna. Good antenna is the most important thing. If the antenna's no good, people ain't going to hear you. So know your propagation. If you live on 20 meters, a lot of people like to go 20 meters. That's great, except you're going to discriminate against everybody within 600 miles of you. 20 meters has a thing called the skip zone. Okay, the skip zone, at least from where I am in Vermont, starts from there, and the skip zone ends just before you get in Dayton. How do I know? Because when I drive out to Dayton, I can't talk to anyone in Vermont. Then when I'm in Dayton, I can. That's the 600 miles there, and then going the other way, it's up to New Brunswick, Nova Scotia area. Okay, so you really want to kind of, if you're doing like an activation, do a little 40-meter action. You know, you get people closer in, give them a chance too. And I know there are park activations that just sit on 20 meters all day. I just couldn't hear them. They couldn't hear me. Terrible. 10 and 15 are good. They're coming back up, but they're not always good. Sometimes they tease you. You know, you hear a few people, but you're only hearing people in Texas. So you get on there, you call CQ, you're not going to talk to too many people. So for your station, don't aim for mediocrity because you may succeed. You don't want to do that, right? You want to, this is what I learned. Over all the years, I have done it Mickey Mouse style. Sorry, Walt. I have done it Mickey Mouse, cheap stuff and whatever. And I've learned that why waste your time with junk? Get a good station, get on the air so people can hear you. So put up the best station you can physically put up. Poor antenna and low power will guarantee you're going to discriminate against the other small stations. The guy goes, yeah, I went to the park with my 10 watts and my little whip and I worked 10 people. Yeah, you work people with the 10 biggest signals in the US. The little guys aren't going to hear you with that. And so here's the thing, I just added this slide. This is kind of interesting to understand what it is you're asking for. So the baseline comparison is 100 watts to a dipole about 25 feet up, which is kind of like an average thing, right? Now, this is what we do with power. So at 100 watts, that's 0 dB. It means no change, right? If you go up to 500 watts, you get like a little Heathkit SB200. I see like a dozen of them for sale here today. That's 7 dB a gain. That's about an S unit you pick up. Just an S unit. And 1500 watts, I wouldn't drag that into a park. You need a 220 volt line, right? But some people might. That's going to pick you up 2 S units. But going in the other direction, 10 watts, now I got my little KX3 there, 10 watts. You've lost 2 S units doing that. And then if you're going to go this 1 watt, you've lost 3 S units. Now let's look at the antenna. Okay, the dipole at 25 feet is 0. That's our reference point, right? The dipole at 50 feet, you pick up about 3 dB or so. It really depends on who you're talking to. If it's somebody close in, probably not much. If it's somebody far away, yes. And of course, the Yagi, again, you're not going to drag a Yagi to the park, but that's going to pick you up 1.5 S units. Now look at the whip. And again, this is kind of an average. This is kind of like your Hustler, your Buddy Pole, or whatever on a tripod or on your car or whatever. Not a great antenna. I mean, it's great if you're mobile, but if you're set up somewhere, not so great. You're going to lose an S unit and a half. So if we compare on this line 10 watts to a whip versus 100 watts to a low dipole, we add up the gains. Minus 10 dB for the 10 watts, minus 9 dB for the whip. That's minus 19 dB. That means you're 3 S units down. So understand what this means. If you're S8 with the dipole, and then you go to the whip, you lose 3 S units, you're S5. By the way, my average noise level is about S5. Not from power lines or anything. That's the noise level across the band. That's just noise that's there. So you're in the noise at this point. That's why people call me, they think they're hearing me, S9, they're thinking they're going to be just as loud. Well, you're going to be just as loud if you're running a high dipole and 500 watts. If you're running a little QRP station, I'm going to have to dig you out of the noise. So that's really important. People say, I want to run QRP. That's what you're giving up. And you're going to have to be very, very patient. The other thing with antennas is height is everything. And people don't understand this at all. The height of a dipole, horizontal antenna above ground, determines what the takeoff angle is. If your antenna is very close to ground, like this picture here, see if you can see that there. So in this case, this is a quarter wavelength high. On 20 meters, that's 17 feet up. So that's our really low dipole. Look where it's radiating. Pretty much straight out, right? You don't work short skip on 20 normally. Normally, you're working out to Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, those places. The ideal angle for that is around 30 degrees. It's like over here. Look how much we've lost. Now, if we put that antenna up to maybe 34 feet, look what happens now. Now the antenna is radiating better. We're looking at the antenna. We're like on the ground looking at the antenna. This is where the antenna radiates up into the sky. It's not like looking from a helicopter down. So this is radiating ideal for the middle of the country, pretty much. And then if we go up to 52 feet, now we're getting to the point where we're getting an antenna more and more ideal to getting out to California. And if we want to do DX is even lower than that. That is what the height buys you. So when someone asks, says, how high should I put my antenna? Did it fall down in the last storm? No, ain't high enough. That's how you figure it out, right? So, you know, you've heard of Maxwell's laws, right? Maxwell's equations. A couple of years ago, I developed Stern's laws of antennas, which it's like Maxwell, but you don't have to do any integrals or calculus or anything. It's pretty understandable. And it means that there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Okay? It means that if you have two antennas that are properly designed, that's the caveat, they have to be properly designed, the bigger one's always going to play better. That's the way it works. Well, I got this antenna, I put it on the ground, I can work the world. Well, yeah, you'll work something, but it's not going to work that well, that's for sure. The second thing, who cares about SWR? Well, when I was a new ham, when I was a novice, whatever, man, I sat there cutting that antenna, cutting it inch by inch. I wanted to get that SWR right down to 1-to-1. Doesn't matter. As far as signal strength, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with your signal strength. You have to keep it low to keep your transmitter happy, and you can do that with a tuner. I used to think tuners were lossy devices and people who used them were cheaters. I use tuners all the time now. Location always beats any antenna. A dipole in the Caribbean beats a big Yagi in New England every time. That's why people go down there to operate. That, and when the contest is over, there's a beach awaiting them. So yeah, being in the right spot, it's just like real estate. Location, 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 right? Okay, and height is everything, as we saw. That height is a big thing. You want to get that dipole nice and high. That's like someone said, well, I built this Yagi antenna, whatever. I think that buddy pole makes a little hex beam, right? And in the article, they show it 10, 12 feet above ground. That antenna is going to radiate straight up. Okay, it's going to have gain, but it's going to radiate straight up. Not going to be that good. If you put that antenna up on a 50-foot pole, yeah, you kick some butt with it. So a high dipole beats a low Yagi. Yes, true, I've seen that. I was having trouble with my Yagi. It wasn't taking power. So I switched to my dipole. So my dipole is 65 feet up. My Yagi is 50. And I was hearing the West Coast better on the dipole. Not the guys in the middle. The guys like in Illinois, the Yagi was working better. But the guys out west, they were better on the dipole. I had Joel Hallis. Remember Joel? I had him model it for me. He says, yes, the higher dipole has more gain over that path than the Yagi. So you got to keep that in mind, is that the Yagi is going to help, but the height helps even more. All right, so know your antennas. That's some of the popular antennas that people use. So the Hustler. What's a Hustler? Anyone own one? I do. Well, a hustler is someone who knows how to get money from others. Okay. What about a buddy pole? What's a buddy pole? Anyone have a buddy pole? I made fun of buddy pole at Dayton, and I could see the three guys in the front row are giving me dirty looks. Is anyone here from buddy pole? 3 hands go up and go, oh shit. No, a buddy pole is your best pal in SP land or Poland. Buddy pole, right? Okay, bad joke. Start throwing the fruit. What's a ham stick? Well, it's nothing more than a stick to keep hams away from normal people. And finally, a tripod. A friend of mine always had these antennas on tripods, and I say, no, a tripod is for a camera. You see the cameras? They're on tripods. We don't have antennas on them. They have cameras on them. That's what you're supposed to do. So here's a look at some antennas here. This is at Night Point State Park. Here's our dipole. I don't know if you can see it. I'm running up the feed line. There's the center of it. It goes from there to there. It goes across 2 trees about 35, 40 feet in the air. That's all the height we had at that particular park. And that's it. Simple. We got a compressed air launcher. We launch it over one tree. We launch it over the other tree. Pick the whole thing up. There we go. Put the whole thing up in about 15 minutes.
How will you feed it? Coax or open wire?
If it's a single band operation,
Yeah.
we finger coax.
Yeah.
But now we're using the Cobra antennas that Joe sells here, and those are fed with window line, and that you can load up anywhere. That's the beauty of those. If you're using coax, don't try to fake your way through a tuner. The coax will give you a lot of loss. It'll work, but not that well. Okay, there you go. This is in Lowell. This is the Lowell National Park or whatever. And so we didn't have much in the way of trees, so I brought myself this 25-foot pole that I drove over, and you can see the dipole coming off of that. There's the generator in the front of the car. They said, do they allow generators there? I said, I didn't ask. And it was so noisy there that the ambient noise level was louder than the generator. And I had a 40-meter dipole hanging from there. I worked Japan from there. So I know the thing worked, right? So people said, did anyone say anything when you were putting that up? I go, no. This is my best antenna. Did anyone recognize this place? This is the Federal Building on Wall Street in Manhattan. And that's the statue of George Washington. And if you look real carefully, there's this appendage in the back of him. I'll give you a close-up. That is a 17-foot long pole with a dipole above his head. Did they let you do that? It says, again, I didn't ask permission. I asked permission to be there. The manager of the site said, yeah, it's a federal monument. Don't burn the joint down. It's okay, fine. She didn't say anything about attaching statues to George, and that's what we did. So I had a full-size 40-meter dipole across, alongside Wall Street. That building in the back is the New York Stock Exchange, by the way. And then the operator who was with me, he had a ham stick on 20 meters. And we were working people, one right after the other, with 40-story buildings all around us. It's amazed how anyone heard us, but they did. Yeah.
General Washington would have approved of that.
Great, no problem. He didn't have to cut down the cherry tree. We cut down the dipole for him. This was our operating location. So this was a walk-in. People say, how did you get there? You can't park on Wall Street. You can't drive on Wall Street. We found the spot around the corner. It was on a Saturday, and we had to bring in the stuff on a cart. So we couldn't bring like a table or a chair or anything like that. We just sat on the ground. So there's my little same laptop as this, and the little LiFo battery running my DX70. So the problem is using this laptop. This laptop has maybe an hour or so of battery in it back in those days. And when the battery dies on the laptop, the logging system goes offline. So I asked Pete, I said, well, I can go back and get some paper from the car. Well, remember, it was 32 degrees and raining. It was grossly uncomfortable. He said, I think we're done here. And we put 220 contacts in the log from a very not so ideal place. This is a better park activation. This is Underhill State Park. So you can see here, this is the big tuner. This is an SB200. I got another tuner driving that, the watt meter. I'm using the K3 and the bigger antenna. I think we pulled in about 700-800 QSOs with that station. So it was just set up on a picnic bench. Now, I'll tell you something. When you set up on a picnic bench like that, you guarantee it's going to rain. I usually operate from inside the van because I don't like, first of all, the water dropping into the SB200 with, 3,000 volts on the finals, not a good situation. Okay, so now the skills. We talked about the station, now the skills. Listen carefully. Receive information is critical. Use a good speaker or headphones. People in the cars, they have the little speaker in the car radio under the dash, and you hear, what? You make any of that stuff out. Just use a good speaker. When you're transmitting, talk in short bursts. Don't do the 80-meter AM scenario where you flip the big switch. Well, I'll tell you what. And you go on for a half hour. That's great for 80-meter AM. It's not good for good communication. Say the important information. Avoid all else. So I'm working a guy in a contest. I can barely hear him, and they're just running on about everything and anything. We have a name for it. It's called diarrhea of the mouth. Hey, just the call sign. I can't hear you. Just the call sign. If I can get that, we're doing good. Enunciate. Don't mumble. Sharp, staccato New England speech. I do this talk in Dayton. I love making fun of them because, like everyone out in the Midwest, they have a speech impediment, right? How do we know that? I says, guys, what's the name of the city just to the south of Dayton? Oh, you meant Cincinnati? There's my point. I said, no, it's Cincinnati. It ends with an I, not an A. The rest of us are going to know that, right? And 8, by the way, is less power in the word for 8 than any other number. So when I'm giving a contest, I got to give a serial number. Anytime there's an 8 in there, it's just a real bear for them to hear me. I end up saying hate. Put the H in front of it, give it a little bit more burst of energy. So yeah, enunciate. Don't say your call sign too fast. A lot of people rush the call sign. Say that slowly. Say everything else fast. Use phonetics on HF. So when you give your call sign on HF, give it phonetically or not at all. When I say W1SJ, 1 in 3 chance I got it right. It's going to invariably be W1FJ, W1XJ, and B, C, D, E, V, all those letters, they all sound alike. You got to use phonetics. And I tell people, phonetically, please. And they don't know what I'm talking about. And then they give me phonetics like they use P for the F sound or something. It's like, oh. Think before you speak. Have something to say. Well, I guess we're all guilty of that. Take notes when listening. So have a pad. Somebody gives you some information, write it down. Particularly, if you have an old brain like mine, doesn't remember anything. But then the other problem I get is you have to write and type legibly. I don't know how you type legibly, but I don't write legibly at all, so I write stuff down. I don't know what the heck I wrote.
Oh, I'm not the only one, thank you.
Oh yeah, no, we all do that. So you become a better operator by engaging in content. How many do contests? How many hate contests? All right, there you go. Well, you know what? Contests have a use. It makes you a really good operator. And you know what? There's a lot of socialization between contesters. It's not just hello, goodbye contacts. In between the contacts, we do a lot of sharing of information, but just very quickly. The goal is to work as many stations as possible in many locations. So you're talking to people over and over again. You're getting very good at what you're doing. And speed and accuracy is paramount because, I send my logs in. If I type in the wrong call letters, they take that contact away and then another one. I get a penalty. So if I put in the log, I better be pretty darn sure it's the right thing. So contesting is fun. And now I used to say, God, it's stupid. 55 years ago when I first started, stupid, just hello, goodbye. Right? And a friend of mine got me to do it. Strongest drug since crack cocaine. I did that contest. I contested every year since then. So it's easy to say, I hate this. Try it. You'll like it. Great way to meet many, many people. Okay, we go together at Hamfest and meet a lot of the contesters. You work a lot of the new states and countries, and it is the best way to hone your skills. So the way to do this to be successful is before the event, learn the exchange and the rules. So, sometimes it's just 5-9 in your state, or 5-9 in your section, or your county, or your Russian oblast, or whatever the heck it is. Learn what it is you need to say to keep the other guy happy. People say, I don't know what to give you, and I have to explain it to them. Again, always use your full call sign with phonetics. Don't just say 2 letters out of your call sign. I had an Italian guy. He kept saying, a Charlie whiskey. I guess CW was in his call sign. A Charlie whiskey, a Charlie whiskey. So I go, no, I'm only on phone. No Charlie whiskey. He went nuts. Guy gives Quebec Alpha. I says, that's great. How do you get a 2-letter call like that? I want to get one of those. Just give me the whole call sign because I am looking, if I get a pileup, I'm looking for the guy where I can get the most number of letters and numbers together. If you only give 2, you're kind of out of the running with that. Don't rush your call sign. Our newbie operators that feel they use W1PU. W1PU. I said W1 Papa, pause, uniform. Our other call, W1NVT, W1 November, and then we run Victor Tango together to emphasize we're in Vermont. It's important because people are going to mix things up. Give the exchange and nothing else. They may not be hearing you, right? And don't say QRP for crying out loud. Reason number 1, I don't care. And actually, no contester really cares about it. I don't care about your QRP. I don't care your marital status. I don't even care about your pronouns. I just want your call sign and the exchange. You can send me the other stuff in an email. I'm in the book. You can do that. That's great. But yeah, and the guys who send QRP, they won't give their call sign phonetically. W3TBD QRP. That's the way they'll say it. I don't know what that is. I go, W3 QRP, go ahead. No, it's W3TBD QRP. About 5 times, he finally gives me the phonetics quickly. I says, lose the QRP, man. That's not needed. The same thing with the guys who operate in the park. They want to go from one park to the other. They say, park to park. I don't need that. Just tell me your call sign. Well, you'll work me fast. I said, no, I won't. I said, I'll work everybody. If I can hear you, you will be in the log. I guarantee it. If I can hear you. But just give the call sign. And again, only repeat the stations the guy asked for. So if the if I go WA6, don't say WA6 again. I got that part. Because the noise level, your signal is going in and out of the noise level. You want to give me the important information when you're out of the noise level. If you keep saying the stuff I need, eventually I'll hear it. If you keep saying all the other stuff, you lessen your chances. And belt out your call and exchange like you mean it. And I tell them, stand up on your tiptoes and open the window and scream it like your life depended on it. And, what, are you crazy? And they do that, and then I can hear them every time. It works. So practice the 3 key skills: listening, getting it right the first time; sending, learning enunciation and voice control. How many are on CW? So you're on CW and using a hand key, make sure you can keep sending that call sign, your call sign, correctly each time. Don't make it like a best 2 out of 3 situation where the guy keeps changing his call sign. It drives you crazy. Logging, accuracy counts. So timing is everything. Don't have any pauses. Ignore anything that doesn't produce results. Guy would get me so mad he'd steal my frequencies. I'd take a chair and break it. And I wrote to the league. He says, do I get points? I get a multiplier if some guy annoyed me and I got mad and broke a chair? No, Mitch, we ain't going to give you credit for that. Sorry. So I try not to break anything. Know your propagation and analyze what you do at the end. Learn the mistakes you made. All right, so who's next? Bob and Bob here yet? Okay, so I'm going to skip over the pileups because we ran out of time and just go into training new operators. So this is important. You know, I mean, the average age in this room looks like about 70. All right? We really got to get new people into this. And the way you do this is use an existing activity like field day or other like contests like QSO parties or special events or park activations. Get them in there, get them on the radio, help them along. You know, I put them on the radio. I don't know what to do. Just give the call sign. So I'll fill you in. No spectating, no watching. This is a hands-on participation thing, and ops do their own logging. Call CQ. Get them to call CQ. They're going to call CQ from a big station. People are going to come back. Oh my God, what am I going to do? This is if you didn't pick anyone up, say again. And they'll call again. And eventually you're going to get it. Or eventually they'll all get pissed off and go away, one or the other, but you'll figure it out, right? So have cue cards. I'll hold up cue cards or I'll just give them a little nudge or whatever. But you want to push the operator to work through it. That's how you eventually get there. Operating is kind of tough because you're talking and typing and listening all at the same time. You're kind of multitasking there. So you want to correct bad habits like not giving the call sign or not giving phonetics, not copying, saying that you copy. No, usually we say thanks when you work somebody. Thank you, QRZ or something like that. You want to give that thing that where they're going to do that. Push the op to be self-sufficient, but don't push too hard. You may scare them away. And usually you want to limit the operator time to like under 2 hours. All right, so be active. Field day, you're moving equipment to the field, you're employing antennas, emergency power, the whole thing, and you get to operate. It's perfect operator training. So the key things: listening, speaking or keying, logging, setup of the equipment, evaluation, and certainly safety. You don't want to lose anything along the way, and practice and practice. Any quick questions? Yes?
You recommend joining areas and participating in areas?
Sure, but that's not going to train you. What ARES does is it's a database that keeps you in touch with the other emergency operators, but it's not going to make you a better operator. You become a better operator by getting involved in the events. So if they have marathons or parades or whatever in your area, get involved in it. Boston Marathon, which just happened, that's a good way to get trained. You get to see the whole picture. Any other questions?
I'll make a comment on areas. We train net control operators in areas, and that's skill that mechanics can use, especially in an emergency. We train them on doing it in simplex mode, not on a repeater. So they have to get relays and things like that. So that forces them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. So that's the only other thing about Aries that I would suggest. Help.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.